Hello and welcome to the last video in this series on control structures. In this video, I would like to go over another problem, but this problem will actually take in consideration all of the various structures that we've been learning about. So the sequence structure, the selection structure, as well as the looping structure. And so the problem that we'll work through here is towards the end of the slide, and it's here. So we created a similar problem in one of the previous videos where we had the end user guess three numbers and we gave an award. In this particular problem, what we're going to do is allow the end user to guess a number between the values of 0 and 10. But we're going to put into practice some of the different structures that we've been learning about. So what I've done here is I have some code that will bring in the random class. We create an object that we instantiate it and create an instance of it. And then our min and max is that it'll generate a number between 0 and 10. And that's what this line is doing here on line 17. And then line 19, we're just outputting that number to the console. So let's go ahead and run this a couple times. We get 0. Let's do it 2 more times. We get 1. And then we get 5. So it gives us a number between 0 and 10. So this code is already given to us. And this problem here is going to allow the end user to try to guess the number. And we're going to keep track of the number of times it takes them to guess the number. So let's continue with our declaration. So in terms of how do we approach this problem, you want to first declare all the variables that you will potentially have in your program. What data will we use in this particular program? And so if we read through this one here, it says after each guess, display a message indicating whether the player's guess was correct, too high, or too low. So I can go ahead and declare some string variables, right? That's going to output too high, too low, or if it was correct. And so I'll say string, and I'll do some finals here. I put a little emphasis on it, with an exclamation. And because this is permissible to actually declare all your variables on one line, you'll separate it with a comma. We'll say too low. Okay, so we declared those variables. The next thing we're going to do here is when the player eventually guesses the correct number, we're going to display a count of the number of guesses that were required. And so in this case here, we're going to need another variable here, and it's going to be count. We'll just call that variable count, and I'll just do it here. And I'll initialize it to 0. And it's a sequence. Okay, and then we're going to look at some other variables we need to declare here. But hopefully this makes sense in terms of reading through the problem and declaring all the particular variables that we would need to run our program, all the data that we would need to run our program. So now let's look at one more thing here in terms of a looping structure that I want to add to this problem here. All right, so here's what I want to add to this problem is that your program will also need to enforce that the end user can only enter a number between 1 and 9. All right, so we're going to ask the user for a number, and then we need to declare that. Let's actually go and declare that variable. So we'll say int user guess. And then here what we're going to do is create a looping structure. Let's create some space that will enforce a number between 0 and 10. And this is going to be part of our defensive programming that we'll do to enforce that the end user can only enter a number that's between 0 and 10. Before we actually do that step here, let's go and actually ask for a number here, right, from the end user. So let's do some system.out.print. And we'll just say, welcome to the guess number game. To get started, please enter a number between 0 and 10. I know we're going off the screen here, but let's see if we can minimize this here a little bit. There we go. Let's do a little bit more. Okay. And then here, because we asked the user for some input, we need to actually receive what comes back from what the user is going to put into the console. So we're going to need a scanner object. So we're going to import the scanner object. That's java.util.scanner. Then here, we're going to create an object instance of that scanner, declare it. Equals new scanner. That's going to be system.in. So we're going to receive a number from the end user, and we'll say user guess equals, let's go use the integer class. And we'll say scan.next line. So we get, we're going to get the user guess. We're going to parse and convert it into an integer, parse it into an integer, and user guess is going to hold the value. And then here's where we're going to do our defensive programming to enforce that the number is actually between 0 and 10. So let's think about what structure we need. So what I would like for you to do is pause the video, and I would like you to come up with the structure that you think that would actually enforce the end user to only ensure that a number is between 0 and 10. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can accomplish that. And then I'll show you the structure once you had a chance to do that. All right, so hopefully this is what you came up with. And what I did was I minimized my screen so you can see more of the code here, or minimize the left sidebar and online GDB Java compiler. And so what we're doing here is that we have two conditions while user guess is less than min. So if it's a number that's below 0, then it's going to go into this block. Or if it's a number that's greater than 10, it'll go into this block and run these various statements. And so it'll keep us trapped into this looping structure until it satisfies both of these conditions, or both of these conditions prove to be false. Once both of these conditions prove to be false, it'll go to here and begin to execute the rest of our program. So now what we need to do is do another looping structure that will check to see if the number is the correct, if it's the correct guess number, or if it's too high or too low. So let's work on the structure to do that. So here we're going to do another while loop. And the same thing, what I would like for you to do is pause this video and see if you can write the condition or the expression that will check to make sure that the number is correctly guessed. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what I have here. All right, so hopefully this is what you came up with. While user guess is not equal to random num. So if the random num is not guessed, then we're going to go into the block, and then we're going to need another structure. So what structure do you believe that we need to check whether or not it's too high, too low, or if it's correctly guessed? And if you guess a selection structure, that is absolutely correct. So we're going to do a selection structure. All right, and again, we're going to code this out together. So pause the video and see if you can go ahead and generate that selection structure that's needed to determine whether it's too high, too low, or the correctly guessed number. So see if you can take a stab at that. All right, so here's the structure that I came up with. And so what this structure is doing here is just going to make a determination if the number is too high. If it's too high, then we're going to output too high. So if user guess is less than random number, it'll output too low. And if the user guess is equal to random num, then it'll output correct guess. And what I'm going to do is we're going to do some sequence statements that is going to simply output the random number what the user guessed, and then also the number that the random number. So let's do a output Okay, so this here just basically just outputs the information, but we're not done yet, right? Because remember, in the last video, this only checks if the number is between a certain range on the onset when we run the program, but it doesn't, let's say for instance the number is too low. It doesn't check again to see if it enforces that the number is between 0 and 10. So what I'm going to do is actually copy this structure again, and I'll just go ahead and put this here. But this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. Let's have this over. So in this case here, what happened is that it'll output the number, but then we're going to do another decision structure to determine if we need to actually go ahead and have the user pick another number, right? So let's go ahead and figure that out. Okay, so what we're going to do here is add another if statement. So a selection structure. And say if user guess is not equal to random num, then we're going to put them into the block, and we're going to take this while loop here. and put that into the block as well. And delete it from here. We're also going to ask the same question here. So please enter new number. So I'm going to ask that primer again. So we see the primer at play here. And then, so this is a single alternative selection structure to determine if the number user guess is not equal to random num. So if that's the case, it'll ask for a new number, and then it'll enforce that the number is in between 0 and 10. And we don't need to do an else branch, because if the number is correctly guessed, then it'll break out of this loop that's on line 37, and it'll continue to the rest of our program. And so, and we'll say we'll just actually repurpose this statement down here. All right. Now, we're not done yet, because remember, we want to count how many times that they actually made a correct guess. And so what we'll do here is just put another statement here and say, so we'll say count plus plus. And then we'll also say number of guesses and we'll just give the count variable. All right, so let's go ahead and run our program and let's see. So a lot of code here for a simple game, and we could have coded this out many different ways. One of the other looping structures that we haven't talked about in this series is a looping structure called the do while, and also another one would be lambda expressions. Now we'll make use of those later on in different video series, but I just want to make note that there are some other looping structures that we have not covered, but we will see some of those looping structures later on in the videos that will be posted. So let's go and run our program to see if we're missing anything or if we need to add anything to make sure that we have all our syntax errors rectified. So let's go and press run. All right, those syntax errors. So it says to get started, please enter a number between 0 and 10. So I could fix some of the wording here. So I'll just go ahead and enter, let's say 3. The random number is 8. I probably need to fix that. The guess 3, number of guesses 1. So please guess again. Probably read some correct language there. So let's go ahead and fix some of those things real quick. So here. Okay, so let's finish that and let's say print line. Fix that, and then here print line here as well, or do this here. So just fixing some of the output, right, so that it makes sense. All right, so let's go run this program. I know we are over 20 minutes, but we're almost done here. All right, so here we go. We'll enter a number. Let's say 4 this time. It's too high. The random number is 2. You guess 4. Number of guesses 1. Please try again to enter a number. Let's put 7. It's too high. Let's put 4. Too high. 6. Too high. 8. Too what is it? Too high. 2. All right, so we actually get thanks for playing the random guess number game, and that's what's outputting here on line 76. So the program is functioning the way that we intend for it to function, but it doesn't give us like a really good sound conclusion, because what happens is that if the number is guessed correctly, it'll go back up to our while statement, and it'll say while user guess is 90 per random guess, but this condition is no longer true, and so it'll skip this whole while block and just go immediately down to system.out.println and output this information here. So it actually did guess it correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify our looping structure just slightly. So we're going to take this out. We're going to just basically do the system.out.print, because if they reach the end of the game, that means that they've actually guessed the correct number. And so we're going to control paste that here, and we'll just get rid of this else branch. And so this will be truly a dual alternative, where it'll just guess it'll just determine if it's too high or too low. And so at this point, our program is done. And then what we can do is just do a friendly statement here and say it took you this many guesses. Okay, so now let's go and run this, and that should do it. So here, enter number between 0. Let's put 3. Too low. Too high. Too high. Too high. Put 5. Too high. Let's put 2. Too low. 1. Okay, we're not getting the correct guess. Let's put 2 in. It's too low. 7. Too high. There we go. We put in the correct number 4. So, so we put in 4, and it says it took you, you guessed correctly. It took you 10 guesses. So we're good to go. We probably want to just output the number. Probably take this statement here. And output those as well. And there's some things that we could do to clean this up a little bit, but nonetheless, that completes this program. So the video is getting a little too long here, so I'm going to end it here. And again, there's many ways we could have coded this problem out. We could have done a do while and did some things a little bit more efficiently, but nonetheless, this meets the demands of the problem. Okay, stay tuned. I think this concludes the series on control structures, and the next series, I believe, is going to be focused on data structures, so static and dynamic data structures. So stay tuned for that.